Welcome, Stargazers. Today is January 6th, 2020. And today in the United States, we have a very, very important and kind of exciting election because the weight of the government hangs in the balance. And I say that very dramatically, but it's kind of true. So first things first, for those of you who are learning astrology, and this is why I'm posting this video, pay attention, and here's a great opportunity to learn, right? So, the 23 Sagittarius eclipse that we saw back in December, we said would be activated January 3rd. And if you're living here in the United States, we all know that the date of the infamous phone call from you-know-who that is currently trying to avoid prison for everything he's got right now by remaining president, it was released to the public on January 3rd, and that has set the whole cascade of dominoes falling. Oh my God. So January 3rd, we got, as promised, the eclipse activation, and boy, was it a doozy. And it is literally only a few days before the elections in Georgia, which the Republicans desperately need. And not all Republicans, a handful of Republicans desperately need, because if they don't win this election, they're really going to be in the hot soup. Oh my God. Now, some things to understand, and I want you to do this, so this is an exercise for you. So, first of all, for those of you like myself who didn't have civics classes in high school, I didn't have the opportunity to go to better funded high schools, so I spent a lot of time in classes that were the equivalent to, if you had an IQ higher than a potato, you spent a lot of time in classes with the general public, who these kids were all going to go into skilled trades and labors, like they didn't take school seriously. So this was the equivalent of remedial classes for adults. It was bad. It was really bad. And the teachers didn't care because they weren't getting paid very well. They didn't have enough books that they needed, yada, yada, yada. I mean, we all know the story around here in the United States. The level and consistency and the integrity of education varies wildly. And in places where there's a lot of skilled trade jobs, where college is not an option or even a fantasy, it's just not going to happen. The public schools tend to get very underfunded. Students don't take it seriously. The parents don't encourage it, and you end up with teachers who are very demoralized, if they care at all, who are also underpaid and basically babysitting. Needless to say, in my high school, we didn't have civics classes. We didn't have any in-depth. It was actually at a different school that I went to. I ended up learning about how government is structured, and I still kind of sort of remember it. So, but for those of you who didn't have civics classes in school and didn't have an opportunity to learn about how the government is broken down in the branches, this is a fantastic opportunity to do a quick mini review. This is so very important, because while the Congress, right, is there in president, we tend to think of the president as having all the power, making the decisions and all sorts of stuff. In a lot of ways, he's a figurehead, right? So he's like a final signatory on documents, but ultimately it's the Congress that has the real power in terms of running the country. Because if Congress decides to obstruct, interfere, or not participate, nothing's going to get done. Nothing's going to get done. Think about the Obama years. Think about that one year those senators specifically did nothing. I think they worked exactly 3 days or 4 days out of a 365-day year because they were protesting. They literally got paid to sit on their butts and read books and watch TV for a year. And they could do that because they're the ones writing the laws. Remember this. This is very important. This is why you have to be aware of what's going on with politicians and what they represent and what they stand for, right? And especially where their priorities are, whether it's you in the community or lining their pockets. Because if they decide to, they can write laws and behave in ways that we could never get away with. Can you imagine going to your job and not working for 363 days out of a 365-day year? How long would you have that job after the third day of pulling that crap, right? These senators did it. And with the president, the thing about it is the president doesn't write the laws. Congress does. Congress writes these laws. And Congress sends them up for the presidential signature, the final seal of approval on these things. However, if there's infighting in Congress, even if the House or someone writes a law to try and pass it, the senators in Congress can absolutely sit on that and not let it get to the president's desk to be signed, meaning it will never get passed through. This is what's happened with these stimulus checks. So The reason we have waited this long to get any stimulus check at all is because Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate Majority Leader, right, has basically killed these bills before they ever got to the president. They never, NEVR, never got to the president to be signed. So he can't make a law. He can only sign and agree that this will be a law. But if he never gets it, he can't sign it and agree to it. Also, those senators are the ones who debated and argued back and forth about how much that stimulus bill was going to be and what exactly was going to be included in that bill. So, because it wasn't just about the money to you, packed into that thing like a Trojan horse are all these other conditions and demands and requests and requirements that go with it. So once that thing is signed into law, everything the original bill was, plus all what they call riders, all the little extras, the Trojan horse extras that they've hidden underneath, that could have nothing to do with the original bill. Literally nothing to do with the bill. It's like buying a car and signing the contract that you've bought the car and taking the car home and realizing that you've got snakes in the trunk and, a bale of hay in the back seat and, and, oh, by the way, you're now obligated to take, the car owner's niece, Thelma to, Sunday church every week for the next 3 months. Oh, wait, where did that come from? What does that have to do with me buying the car? Well, honey, that was in the contract. A bill is a contract. Once it becomes a law, it's official. And they can pack anything they want into those bills at the very end, and it doesn't have to be anything to do with the original bill. That's a lot of weird stuff gets passed into law and gets approved, right? That shouldn't have been approved, because in order for this bill, with the main part that we need to get through, it's got to sign. It's got to be taken with whatever the little extras are, or it gets kicked back to Congress and they get to fight over it all over again, which is what's been going on with our stimulus bill. So it wasn't just our stimulus bill; it was all the other stuff packed into that bill that were going to be approved if the original bill being sent was signed over, and that's where the problem was. So every time they disagreed, it had to be kicked back to Congress, and they had to fight over the riders. The Trojan horse riders again, right? So Congress is where the power is. It's not the president. The thing about a president or a dictator or a king or any national leader, right, or queen, these are figureheads. These people symbolically represent the mass consciousness of a nation or a country. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, if you live in North Korea, right, you don't get a choice in who your figure like that. It's not fair. Ooh, what just happened? Sorry, new phone. If you live in North Korea and you've got Kim Jong-un or any of the Kims as your fearless leader, you don't get a choice in who your national figurehead is, who the symbol of your mass consciousness is, right? But remember, we're talking about the nation, not the individuals. So in the evolution of a nation, remember, Rome, Italy, Rome now is not what Rome was thousands of years ago. The nation itself has evolved. Thank God. Caligula, anyone? Sorry. So nations evolve as well, right? And also remember that China, in case you didn't know, was not always a communist dictator country. That's a recent evolution of the nation, right? So the figurehead is the symbol. He's literally the president, leader of a nation, is the symbolic figurehead of the nation as it is evolving, separate from the individuals within it. This thing that's desperately trying to fight his way out of prison by refusing to leave office. And literally, this is what all this is about, because he knows the minute he sets foot outside of that office, he no longer has protection and immunity, and he's probably going to prison. Or he's going to the Hague in the Netherlands for international war crimes, or a whole lot of karma consequences are coming from his actions, and well deserved. So if I were him, I'd be terrified too and fighting for tooth and nail to stay in power, because Jesus, the options once I leave are not good, and he doesn't have a lot of options when he leaves. Now, which brings us back to Georgia. So this is why this is important. We have 2 seats that are going to determine who the majority controlling the Senate, House, and Congress is, right? Remember the words, Senate Majority Leader. Okay? So if both of these Senate seats in Georgia are flipped and they are no longer Republican seats, which means that the Senate Majority Leader is or remains Mitch McConnell, then it will become Democratic majority. by 1 seat, by 1 seat. Literally, are those 2 seats in Georgia? 1 seat makes all the difference. We have to flip both of them. If we only get one of the two, it remains under Mitch McConnell. And if you've been following anything, you know anything about Mitch McConnell, you know what an evil pile of steaming, oh, Jesus, God. But if we get both of them, the Senate becomes Democratic controlled, and that means the Senate Majority Leader is no longer Mitch McConnell, but a Democratic Party member, which also means that change is officially here. And that means that our figurehead president, who signs off on these bills and laws, will now probably receive bills and laws, or bills to make laws rather, that all of us are going to agree with mostly, right? And he can request and try to take action without obstruction. So we won't have 4 more years of what Obama went through when Congress basically decided they're going to protest having a black president. Oh, the horror. And didn't do anything. Didn't do anything. They literally would not let anything go through. So nothing got done. Now, listen, you can have all the feelings you want about Obama. You can have all the feelings you want about Bush and Trump and Biden. We can have all the feelings we want about these characters. But ultimately, remember, at the end of the day, it's the Senate majority and Congress where the power is. And these are the people we need to watch. So when we go to vote, and this is why voting is important, it's not just about who the figurehead is. It's not just who we're voting for president. When you vote down the party line on a ticket, you're voting in the senators and House representatives. So if you don't know who these people are, like Loeffler and Purdue in Georgia, boy, we're learning a lot about them now, aren't we? You're basically signing a blind check to any greedy ass, that wants to be a senator, because that's where all the power and the money is. They don't care about you. A lot of them honestly don't care about you, and we're seeing it now. Now, here's something interesting. So the other thing, too, is that they're doing this thing where they're contesting the electoral results. And there's a lot of talk about that, so this is a great time to pay attention and learn, right? But what's interesting is that the states that they're specifically contesting the results in are also states where there's a high level of poverty, a very low level of education, and they're banking on the fact that these people are what they consider stupid. And I mean stupid because these are people who didn't have civics in high school, went to very underfunded schools, knew that when they grew up, they're going to work on farms, do skilled labor, and they didn't need an education because they weren't, I'm not going to college, right? They know that, right? Missouri is a classic example of, good God. And I'm not saying this about Missourians. I'm saying that this is the environment that we're talking about. This is not a really highly intellectually supportive environment in Missouri. And the senators and the reps that come out of Missouri, they know that. They know that. So the senators we're talking about now in the 7 states that they're talking about, which surprisingly includes Pennsylvania, they're also banking on the fact that these people are not very well educated and they're not very smart and they're not paying attention. And this is why these people consistently, these red states, consistently vote down the party line on their tickets over and over and over again, even to their own detriment. Kentucky is a classic example. In Kentucky, right, where Mitch McConnell is from, how that man has won elections over and over again has a lot to do with a lack of education and understanding about his role in government and how he has betrayed his own people over and over and over again. Okay, because if you look at Kentucky, there's literally a strip of Kentucky. I think it's called the Blue Ridge Mountain of Blue Ridge Valley. It separates Kentucky. So there's this thin strip of affluence or wealth in the state of Kentucky. That's where all the money and education is. The rest of the state is all mountainous, so it's very hard to put industry out there, right? And they've heavily relied on coal mining because that's all you could basically do in that terrain. So you have an obscene amount of teenage pregnancy out there. You've got an obscene amount of drug addiction. You've got an obscene amount of unemployment and welfare and just wow, right? It's the 3/4 of the state is on welfare, raising children. They got pregnant by, at 13, or they're on drugs. It's not good. It's not good because there's no work out there, right? And with that, these are people who don't have educations, either by choice or by circumstance. And Mitch McConnell knows this. Mitch McConnell knows this. So this is largely how he's gotten into office over and over and over again. Keep beating that drum, beating that drum, beating that drum. So watch this race today. And remember, this is all coming from the January 3rd eclipse activation of that 23 Sag eclipse. Now, the last thing I want to give you before I sign off is this. I'm going to put the link down below. Go to astro.com and look for the USA charts. Now, in the United States, we've got multiple charts. Like it's the big puzzle, right? Ooh, the mystery game. Which one's the real chart for the US? And I'm not going to get into it. Jesus, I don't have time for this. But there was an astrologer who pointed out something in terms of transit activations that I thought was very useful. And I agree with them. I agree with them. And that is the Constitution, the chart for the Constitution of the United States, as opposed to the official USA chart, is the one that seems to be the most sensitive to transits. And that chart right now is also the one that's taking this eclipse. So you'll see it as an opposition. I'm not going to tell you where it is. You, my astrological sleuth, are going to find it yourself, because this is your astrology lesson for the day. And make sure you watch these elections and pay attention to how people are explaining why this is important and how this impacts us, because everything about how we move forward and who's going to retain power and what we've seen of people and what they've done with the power they've had so far as it affects us, right, is on the line right now. And like I said, it's going to be chaotic until the middle of January, and for the next, so it's going to be chaotic until the 13th, 14th, when we get past this next set of aspects. We know that. But also remember, I mentioned this and I'll say it again, for the next 2 or 3 months, like literally until we get into March, Uranus is moving like zoom, like a roller skate on a greasy floor, like it's moving. So things for the next 3 months are going to happen fast. After March, things will slow down and go back to normal speeds. But for right now, between now and March, things are going to move at hyper warp speed, and there's going to be an urgency to get stuff done and to get things rolling and, literally lead, follow, get the hell out of the way now. That is what we can expect to this energy until March. So also know that some people are sensitive to these vibrations. They're not processing it. They're not understanding it. They're just sensitive to it. And they're typically actors that act out some of that. So you're going to see a lot of that urgency, that urgency misplaced in things like driving on the road, right, and getting in checkout lines and all sorts of mundane, normal life stuff that shouldn't be a big deal. You're going to see that a lot. So understand that that's where some of that is coming from the next 2 or 3 months, and try to watch yourself that you're not also being one of those people too. So I'll talk to you guys later. Here's the races.